The top engines of these days are very remarkable. They're giving us many times new opportunities in particular openings, in particular sidelines of openings. And what's the most important thing about top engines, in my opinion, is that many times they're giving us accurate information about the current evaluation of complex positions. So when you play maybe a complex middle game, then the engine will give you a really accurate evaluation of your position. So maybe you're bothered by a certain position in the Ruy Lopez, then we want to know, of course, if this continuation is good for white, if this continuation is good for black, or is it an equal continuation, is it a continuation that simplifies the game enough. So we ask ourselves many times the question, what's our current evaluation of the current position? So what still, in my opinion, is not good by the top engines is a certain types of positions that still I think the engines don't understand in the best way, and these are blocked out pawn structure positions. So when the pawn structure is blocked out, then of course there's simply no pawn mobility. So it means when you maybe have many pawns on light squares, then of course your light square bishop is not a good piece. So it could be paralyzed by your own pawn structure. So I still think that the engines have trouble to understand this types of position where one single piece is simply paralyzed. So this kind of a pattern happened also in this game that I wanted to show you today. It's a beautiful game played by Rebel against Stockfish 15, in which Stockfish really paralyzed one single minor piece by its opponent and then tried to reach the endgame stage. Really a simple idea, not really a complicated tactical idea or something. No, Stockfish simply paralyzed one minor piece by creating this blocked out pawn structure, and the Rebel engine never understood the possibility of this kind of an idea. So in my opinion, really instructive game that I think causes really cool tactical ideas in the middle game stage. So let's see now the game, Rebel versus Stockfish 15, and the cool part is about this game that we'll see now also a cool opening theory of the Ruy Lopez. So this will be also an instructive game because many of us are probably playing the Ruy Lopez from white's and from black's perspective. So it's of course the most often played opening chess history. So I think there are cool ideas here also in this game that you can use in your home preparation in this beautiful opening. So knight to f3 by Rebel, knight to c6, bishop to b5. We have the Ruy Lopez, a6, the Morphy Defense, bishop to f4, knight to f6, hitting pawn after kingside castling by Rebel. Now Stockfish goes with b5, bishop to b3, bishop to c5. This move is playable. Of course, it creates new tactical opportunities around the square f2, although the more solid way is to go maybe something like bishop to e7. But now after move bishop to c5, there is a certain tactical pattern that white will probably use. We'll come now to the moment, because after move a4, rook to b8, getting out of the a file attack, we have now this idea, knight takes e5. And this is not a mistake. This is also not a mistake by black. Many positions have been played in this particular line, so no one made a mistake. It's just a tactical sequence that you have to know now, because after knight to e5, now d4 is coming. So the idea of whites in this particular line is just get rid simply of this beautiful bishop pair that black has now, because you have to now give up back the bishop, you have to now pick up the pawn, and after queen to d4, we have now to move d6, and this is now the position that happened also many times in chess history. There is also beautiful gameplay by Hikaru Nakamura against Magnus Carlsen in this position. So really a beautiful tactical battle it was. So here after move d6, you have now, in my opinion, two choices how to go into this game. You can play the move f4, which is the more aggressive way, of course, and this was the continuation between Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen. Let's see how this game probably will go on. So now you play knight to c6, and after queen to c3, hitting the knight again on c6, you have to step back, and many times white will go with this aggressive method with the move e5. This wasn't really the game now that we're analyzing today, but I wanted to show a little bit of theory also in this particular line. So after move e5, you have to play, of course, knight to e4, and after queen to e1, we play something like knight to c5, and this should be, I think, again, a solid game. Black is now this beautiful knight in the center of the board, has, of course, a little bit problems here around the square d6, but in the next couple of moves we can castle, maybe compete also against this annoying bishop on b3, and this should be a playable line. The engine, for instance, gives here a 0.0 evaluation for both sides. So nothing spectacular with this move f4. So after move f3, in this particular position, f3 was played by the Rebel engine. Stockfish continued with the move c5. Now after move queen to f2, we have to say it here, black has several problems in the position. First of all, it's the weak square on d5, but also the backward pawn on d6. But With the move c5, Stockfish has here a really beautiful space advantage on the queen side, and there is now a positional threat of c4, and that's now the pattern that Stockfish will recognize. So this c4 is not dangerous immediately, because still the bishop can maybe get out with c3, bishop to c2, or with bishop to a2, bishop to b1. So still the bishop has maybe a certain activity, so the bishop can be maybe activated later into the game. But this is a pattern. This is an idea that we want to play. We want to play c4 and lock out the bishop on b3. Notice how Stockfish will do this now in really brutal positional way. So here Stockfish first of all castle. We have rook to d1. Normal idea, attacking simply the weakness, the main issue here, the backward pawn on d6. Now Stockfish continues with the move c4, and after bishop to a2, still this bishop is not locked out, because still we have to say it, c3 is an opportunity, maybe get the knight out, and still the bishop has maybe some kind of an activity, because okay, the pawn on e4 is standing in the way, but afterwards maybe with the move f4, maybe e5, this bishop can be still liberated. So I would say it's simply not locked enough, but Stockfish will simply build the whole game about this tactical pattern that Stockfish will simply try to lock out now the bishop further. So now Stockfish goes with the move b4. The problem is now, again, if you play c3, the problem is now, you look at this, b3 is trapping the knight immediately. If you play now something like b3 immediately, then we pass through with the move c3, and look at this bishop is paralyzed here on the edge of the board, and also the knight cannot get out. So in this particular scenario, two minor pieces would be simply locked out by this beautiful pawn activity of black. So that's why after move b4, first knight to d2 was played by Rebel, queen to c7, knight to f1, trying to search for new opportunities for the knight, bishop to e6, controlling further here the square c4, with the preparation maybe again to lock the bishop with the move b3. So bishop to g5, attacking the knight. We have now knight to h5. Stockfish doesn't want to have this bishop to f6 annoying move, which creates of course a messed up pawn structure in front of the king. So that's why Stockfish gets out of the attack of the bishop. We have bishop to a3 and now a5. Really creating here really nice structure on the queen side. The main advantage of course that black has here is the space advantage on the fourth rank. Really so far a nice positional game play by Stockfish 15. So even if you play something like f4 here, there is always this problem of knight to g4. So this move f4 has to be prepared first with the move h3. So it's of course preparation, but you lose also an extra tempo. So after move a5 here, queen to h4 was played by the Rebel engine. Stockfish retreats with knight to f6. We have now the move bishop to d4, and now comes this idea, knight from f to d7, with the idea to play knight to c5, and then again with some methods c3 or b3, again creating some madness here on the queen side. So knight to e3 with the preparation to play knight to d5 or knight to f5. These are now also some weak squares in black's position. f6, we have now queen to e1, and after king to h8, Stockfish gets out of the range of the light square bishop. It's of course not directly hitting the king, but Stockfish doesn't want to risk anything. Still there is a competition of the light square bishop, but so far Stockfish is probably trying to control the f5 square. If the knight comes on f5, then we'll probably trade it off, and when you give up maybe the light square bishop for a knight, then maybe there are some tactical possibilities on this long diagonal. So king to h8, really a nice defensive move here by Stockfish 15. So now comes h3, probably with the preparations you play finally the move f4, but now Stockfish is inviting f4, because if f4 happens, we have again this new square for the knight, knight to d7, again knight to c5 will probably happen. So queen to f2, we have knight from e to d7, and now h4 here played by Rebel. Rebel is trying to do something. Rebel is trying to open the position. For instance, if you play bishop to b1 now, if you try maybe to play c3, then the problem is now knight to c5. If you play for instance c3, the problem is now this pawn is hanging, so there's also the problem of the weak pawn on a4. So it's something also that has to be considered in this position. So we have now many weaknesses actually here also in white's position on the queen side. So h4, as we said by Rebel. Now comes queen to c6. We have now the move b3, and look at this Rebel engine is not understanding that here the pawn c3, pawn move c3 is going to happen. Look at this, the whole queen side is now paralyzed, and the basic strategic goal here for black is nothing complicated. I think we want to reach the endgame stage. We want to trade off more pieces. We want to, I don't know, maybe even trade off rooks. We want to, I don't know, maybe even trade off the queens and go into maybe knight versus bishop endgame where the knight would be much more powerful. Maybe the knight on b6 is not on the optimal square, but it will find always new opportunities in the game. This bishop will never find any opportunities in the game because it's simply paralyzed by its own pawn structure. Really a monstrous bad bishop strategy here by Stockfish 15. So rook to e1, we have h6, queen to g3, knight to e5, getting use of course of this beautiful squares all over the board, king to h1, queen to b7, and now after move knight to f5, as we said, Stockfish has to control this week's squares. Now finally, after bishop to f5, we have e takes f5. So nothing changed basically in the position. This knight is powerful. It competes against this bishop. This knight will eventually get into the game, but this bishop is still bad on a2. So h5, rook from a to d1, knight to d5, trying to get new squares in the position. Bishop to b1. Here Rebel is really desperate where to go with this light square bishop. We have knight to e7. We have queen to f4, protecting the pawn on f5. We have rook to d8, fixing the structure around the square d6, king to g1, and now this other knight is also coming again in a beautiful way into the game. We have king to f1, and now, as we said, we are trying to reach the endgame stage. Nothing complicated here. Knight to d4, rook, queen to d4. We have d5, queen to c5, and now d4. Really beautiful move here by Stockfish, because if queen to a5 happens, then with rook to d5, actually the queen gets trapped. So that's why after move d4, we have rook takes d4. Okay. Stockfish lost the pawn, but as we said, it doesn't matter. We want to reach the endgame stage. We want to trade off more pieces. Rook, we have queen to a8, king to f2, rook takes d4, queen to d4, rook to d8, hitting the queen. The queen has to step back. Rook to d2, a beautiful check. King to g3, and now after queen to b8, there are certain tactical threats on this long diagonal, so that's why here the Rebel engine has to step back. King to h7, improving a little bit the position of the king. We have queen to e4, queen to d6, queen to f4, rook to d1. As we said, we are trying just to simplify the game till the endgame stage, where we are left simply with the knight against this bad bishop on b1. Queen to e3, and after rook to d4, queen to f2. Actually, in this position, the Rebel engine even resigned. So really wild stuff. In the next couple of moves, we can of course try again to occupy the second rank. There are also probably some ideas of a queen to d7. This pawn cannot be protected in an easy way. So even if you play something like g4, then you're opening again simply the position too much in front of the king. So in this position, as we said, the Rebel engine resigned. So this pattern, you see, is really instructive how Stockfish played the game against one single piece, but we have to say Stockfish also lost one game. I've analyzed the also game in the beautiful Benoni, in which Lila C0 did the same to Stockfish, paralyzed also the bishop in the game. Stockfish never got out with one single piece. So this kind of an idea, I still think, bothers the top engines of these days. Although we have to say the Rebel engine is maybe not the best engine in the world, but look at this. It has 3,400 rating points, so it's a powerful engine. Missed this kind of an idea. Stockfish brutalized it with a simple bad bishop strategy here. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting idea of the Ruy Lopez for sure, but also interesting endgame patterns. If you want to see more beautiful chess games like this, check out my coverage of our common chess games played by computer series. Here's the link of our whole playlist, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.